Yeah, yeah.
And there have been suggestions that some of the money from the bank robbers went to help finance the bombing. Peter Langan was one of the Midwestern bank bandits, and he's in a federal prison in Illinois. And once Wendy Payton came by here, she had been to Texas to the library. See, Stephen Jones was Timothy McVeigh's attorney. All the papers from Timothy McVeigh's trial, Stephen Jones donated to this law library in Austin, Texas, because that's where Stephen Jones went to school. So that's why all the stuff is at that law library. And Wendy had been going down there for quite a while then, and I guess she had written Peter Langan, because she showed me a letter where Peter Langan said, and this was a couple of years ago, Peter Langan said, "Tell Janey Coverdale I'm sorry about her grandchildren." Now this was one of the neo-Nazis too. So she gave me his address. I asked for it. And I sat up, and it took me a while to make up my mind to write this man, because the reason I wanted to write him, I wanted to find out what he knew about the bombing. The reason I was hesitating, because he was a neo-Nazi. And I kept thinking that if I write this man and he write me back and call me a whole sack of dirty names, I'm going to be very upset with him. But eventually I did write him. And he and I wrote each other back and forth for about a year, a little longer than a year, until I read this book. In this book, Timothy McVeigh says that the Midwestern bank bandits played a part in the bombing, including Peter Langan.
Okay.
So that's when Peter Langan and my friendship ended right then. I wrote him a letter, and I cursed him out, and I told him if I ever found out that he helped murder my grandchildren, I was going to spend the rest of my life making sure he never got out of prison. Not executed, just spend the rest of his life. Well, he's doing a life sentence anyway, but he was trying to get it reduced. And the strangest thing about Peter Langan, his father was a CIA agent.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
And he's a neo-Nazi?
Yeah. And right now he's doing a life sentence plus, I think he said he had served 5 years, and he still, and he had served 10 years. He was working on the 20 years, and when he do that, then he got a life sentence.
Okay.
But his dad was a CIA agent.
It seems that there's a lot of merging of police, FBI, and criminal groups overlapping each other.
Yes.
People moving in and out of those types of things. And that must be very upsetting when you're, related to the victims of a crime, and you're just trying to see some justice. It must be very heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking.
To see that.
It makes you angry. It teaches you not to trust anybody.
Yeah.
And my government, I do not trust. Just like I said, I've been trying to get up there. Now I've sent in 3 applications to visit David Hammer. 2 of them, twice, I was rejected.
Did they give you a reason?
Security reasons.
Just unspecified security reasons.
Well, the first one, it said I was arrested back in 1974.
Oh, okay. Wow.
For operating an open saloon.
36 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I did was I was working at this club, and I served 2 cops 2 drinks.
Right.
And I was arrested.
Okay.
And
so they're holding that against you?
Yeah, until I finally sent the paperwork up there where charges were dropped against me.
They dug that up and tried to use that against you?
Yes, they did. So then I wrote the warden, who was a black woman. I wrote her. a letter and fill out an application, send it to her. I got another denial. So I guess it was about 6 or 8 weeks ago, I filled out another application and sent up there. I haven't heard from her.
Okay.
But Hammer told me that what he found out is that the FBI's got this big thick file on me and they got a flag on me.
Right. And once they do that, you don't really have any rights anymore,
No.
do you? They just won't let you do certain things. And now you were saying earlier that there are some other victims' family members
Kathy
who
Wilburn
had their passports.
Yeah, Kathy Wilburn
retracted?
told me that they took her passport. She had to turn in her passport. She wasn't allowed to fly. Now, I can fly so far. I flew back in November, because I flew to
Sure.
New York to visit my son. But she said they weren't allowed to fly because they were labeled terrorists.
Let's just clarify, these are parents of 2 children who died
She
in the
lost her
bombing.
grandchildren, 2 little grandsons in
Grandchildren.
the bombing. We are not supposed to ask any questions about the bombing. We are supposed to listen to and believe everything the government has told us, which doesn't make any sense. There were videotapes of the federal building and the buildings all surrounding the federal buildings that Jesse Trinidad has been trying to get them to release to him for years. They will not do it.
So they were like surveillance videos of the streets and around there.
That's
Yeah,
right,
okay.
and it would have shown who all was in that Ryder truck. It would have shown where that Ryder truck, which direction it came from and everything, if there was anybody else. Now, Tim was supposed to came to Oklahoma City that Sunday before the bombing, which was Easter Sunday. He was supposed to left that yellow Mercury parked in a parking lot right directly across the street from the federal building. That car was moved, because if it hadn't been moved, it would have burned out. Because when I got up to the federal building that morning, every car in that parking lot was on fire.
Okay, right.
So what I believe, and nobody's going to admit this, that second person in that Ryder truck was dropped off at that corner, and that person moved the car. And then Tim went around, because Danny said Tim was only gone for a little while, went around a block or 2 and came back and parked across the street.
I see. Yeah. Oh, gee, it's complicated. There's just so much information, and it's really hard. You obviously know a lot about this, and you can see where there are inconsistencies. You can see where they're telling lies.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, when they hear all this, they're just going to get confused.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm trying to do with our media and our podcasts that we do and our videos is just try to get it down to something that everyone can understand. And I think some of the simple observations, you've made observations, other victims' family relatives, and of course Chris is making the film, has put together it all into one narrative. But I guess it's just really important to emphasize that a lot of the relatives of the victims are not happy with the investigation. Would you be able to give an estimate of how many or what percentage of people connected to this event are dissatisfied with what the government has done?
I would say at least half of them.
That's a lot.
I would say at least half of them. A lot of family members. Okay, see, I spent a lot of time in Denver. I was in Denver for all of the hearings. I was in Denver for both trials. I came back to Oklahoma City in April of '98. And I started calling family members. A lot of them were too scared to ask questions.
But they had questions.
They had
felt
questions,
they weren't getting,
but they were afraid
Yes,
to ask.
yeah.
Just like this one couple I talked to, they were both on Social Security. They lost their daughter in the bombing. And what they were saying is, you know, we just have our Social Security checks. If we start asking questions, they'll probably do something where we won't get our checks.
Right.
And another family member, lady, lost her husband. She had been asking questions because she and I have spent a lot of time in the U.S. Attorney's office here. But after I came back and I asked, I said, "Are you afraid?" She said, "You're damn right I'm scared." We shouldn't have to live that way. We should not have to be afraid of our government.
Yeah, I mean, you are the people who need to find justice. You are the victims. You're connected to the victims. You're closely related to the victims. So you are the people who the government should be bending over backwards to help, to assist. And if you're not satisfied with what they've done, then you have the right to demand a new inquiry.
That's right.
But instead, and this is a common pattern, we've seen it with a lot of other massive crimes that have taken place, is that the victims are largely ignored. It doesn't often suit the government strategy or policies to go to look at certain issues. And of course that leads to a lot more conspiracy theorizing, because when you see people are covering things up, when you see investigators and FBI covering things up, obviously your mind starts to wonder, were they involved?
That's right.
And I mean, we can't know for sure, I guess. It's very hard for us to know for sure, but it does imply that they were involved if they were involved in covering it up. And of course then it seems like that we're saying, well, there's a big conspiracy. Well, there appears to be a big conspiracy. That's all we can say.
Year before last, this was like the end of September. And it was like around 7 o'clock in the morning. I was still in the bed. My phone rang. It was David Hammer.
Right. Really?
David never called me early in the morning like that. And he said, "I need you to get in touch with Jesse Trinidad and tell him to call me." He said, "The FBI has been here to see me." And I said, "What do they want?" He said, "I can't talk about it over the phone. Just tell Jesse to call me." So it took me 2 days to get Jesse because, like I said, he's an attorney and he was in court. So the second day I got him on the phone and I told him that he needed to call David. I said, "Now David said he's not going to talk to the FBI." I said, "Is that wise?" And Jesse said, "You're damn right it is." So then I didn't hear anything else. So finally, I talked to David again, and I asked him, I said, "What did the FBI say?" He said, "Call Jesse." So I called Jesse and found out what they had said to David is, "You need to stop writing the book."
Right.
You stop writing the book, we guarantee you will come off death row. But if you continue writing the book, we will do everything within our power to see that you are executed.
Great. Okay, charming.
And so I asked him, I said, "Did they tell you who they were?" He said, one said his name was John Hershey. I know John Hershey. Right. And I thought he was retired from the FBI. Really? So in the meantime, David's, one of his attorney's investigators were here. And I remembered that I had a newspaper clipping with John Hershey's picture. So I told her, well, she was leaving, and I caught her at the airport. And I told her I had that picture, and she gave me an address, told me to send it to her. So I did. They took that picture to the prison and showed it to David. Wrong person.
Okay. All right.
Wasn't John Hershey.
So it was a false name.
Yep. Somebody was using his identity. We don't even know if they were FBI agents or not.